This is the Nightshade Cult, a podcast macabre.
We bid you welcome. Enter freely and of your own will.
I'm Nick Grimm.
And I'm David Graves.
We'll be your horror host for this dissection of Mark Frost and David Lynch's 1991 surrealist mystery horror soap opera, Twin Peaks Season 2.
Good evening. This is the soapiest of operas at this point.
It really goes heavy soapy. This season, I mean, this is no secret. This season's a bit more troubled than the first one. The first one's very focused.
It's a tight 8 episodes, and this is a sprawling 22.
Yeah, I would say, and it fully goes off the tracks for at least 5, but possibly 7 whole episodes.
Yeah, I think that there was probably like a solid 12 episode season in this material.
Well, I think there's 15 strong episodes.
Probably 15 strong episodes that could have been edited to 12 if you cut side plots that were pointless.
Yeah. But there's like 6 or 7 episodes that are all pointless side plots.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Like where one important thing happens in the entire episode and the rest is Deputy Andy doofing around with Dick Tremaine.
Or James doing the nothing side plot.
James and Evelyn. Oof.
Yeah.
That was rough. I was just like
utterly pointless.
I was dying for that shit to be over.
But not to just start this episode off just by purely shitting on season 2. It definitely wasn't as good, but it did everything more. So there was way more soap, there was way more drama, but there was also way more like weird supernatural, a lot more paranormal. And so it's just like whatever element you liked in season 1, you got more of it.
Yeah.
You also just were drinking from a fire hose of other shit that you didn't want.
I'll hold more of my thoughts because it's hard to talk about without just getting into our regular segments.
Yeah, get into our story segment, the first part of it.
But this was, it's simultaneous, like, it's not as bad as the haters will tell you. There was, and fully, like, a lot of the most iconic Twin Peaks stuff happens in this season.
Yeah, there is a lot of really cool stuff. A lot of characters that weren't in season 1 come in season 2, and some of them I quite like.
Yeah.
And a lot of them I don't like. But there's a lot of crazy stuff. I will say, even though we're not quite getting into the story yet, solving the mystery of Laura Palmer's death was too early.
It takes all the wind out of the show for me and for the viewers at the time.
As soon as you know who killed Laura Palmer, you could just be done. Yeah,
there's kind of this like 3-pronged problem that happens with this second season where the studio or the network, ABC, is leaning on them pretty hard. Reveal the killer. We need to reveal the killer. So they do that earlier than they planned, and that takes a lot of the momentum out of the show. Then they move the show from Fridays to Saturdays, which is a bad move. Just for less people watch TV on the weekends than they do on the weeknights. And then to complicate that even more, Operation Desert Storm happens, and the show is regularly interrupted for real-time coverage of the war. And so several episodes were interrupted or disrupted or not shown at the right time. And so this went from being a very highly rated show to, I think they say, 83 out of 85.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it was by the final episode, no one is watching anymore.
Yeah, there was no more motivation. They'd lost all the steam that they'd built up from season 1, and they'd really just, I mean, they literally lost the plot, and figuratively, it was just completely done.
Yeah, it's hard to kind of almost put yourself back in the frame of mind of appointment viewing, where you have to watch things at a certain time.
Yeah.
And then when that time moves and then that time is disrupted, and on top of that, the show is less interesting than it was.
What's going to keep you watching?
Yeah. I mean, because there's no makeup view. It's like, oh, last night was Twin Peaks was interrupted, and you missed half the episode. Here it is.
Yeah.
No, you just lost it.
You just lost it. Yeah, you just don't know. Like whatever all you did was just watching the old footage of like not smart bombs back then. But do you remember the Desert Storm?
Oh yeah, it's like it was all night vision, so it was green,
and you just see like a tracer, and then a building.
Yeah, it's just you see just like tomahawk missile after tomahawk missile, just boom, boom, boom. Yeah, it was crazy.
Yeah. So yeah, that really disrupted the whole Twin Peaks experience.
Yeah, it's media consumption it's an entirely different animal now because everything is on demand and everything is competing for eyes, and it's just back then you really were you were shackled to when you could watch and what was available.
Yeah, and the show didn't get syndicated until quite a bit later when they started running it again on Bravo, because that's a cable network. So that's probably some years later. So probably those interrupted episodes, people just didn't see them for years.
Yeah, this was I was looking up recently rankings of top television shows of all time, and this consistently rates in the top 20 shows of all time. And I mean, especially if it's curated for, they don't include things like Saturday Night Live, 60 Minutes, you know, ongoing programs like that, but actual like dramas. This is always in the top 20 and often in the top 10.
Yeah.
So
it's enormously influential. That's the thing that just was kind of hitting me in the face all through when we watched the first season, was how this is the way stories are told now in this sort of condensed format, the 8-episode format. How influential it was on things like the X-Files and everything. Like, this show changed television, and that's not hyperbole. It just literally did.
Yeah, this led to so many more things, so many more serial TV shows and whatnot rather than episodic. It was a pretty influential show, but this season is a bit of a letdown.
It's bumpy, yeah. So why don't we roll the music and we'll get into the dissection. Even as the mystery of the murder of Laura Palmer is resolved, the town of Twin Peaks is not done with Special Agent Dale Cooper, as his past comes back to haunt him, and the web of lies that surrounds the town continues to spread.
It's a pretty good synopsis. I do love it when Harry deputizes Dale.
Yeah, because that is firmly, it's at the beginning of the leaving the tracks period of the show. But even within those 6 or 7 episodes, there's still some fun stuff that happens.
Yes, absolutely. And you still get the Agent Dale Cooper, I don't know, the pitter-patter dialogue style. And it's really enjoyable the entire time.
Yeah. So again, it's written by Mark Frost and David Lynch, but we've got a lot more writers this time, and it shows. We've also got Harley Payton, Robert Ingalls, and Barry Pullman contributing significantly, and then Trisha Brock on episode 10 and 16, Scott Frost on episode 8 and 14, and Jerry Stahl on episode 4.
Okay.
So, whole lot of people writing. And everyone's introducing characters. Like, everyone is like coming up with new subplots and their own little sort of pet stories to tell.
Yeah, like a new romantic interest for a character we already know, or like so many characters like that. And then they do wrap up some storylines that I thought were I did want to know more about, like the Josie storyline and all of that, and Catherine's brother, what's his name, the old man.
Oh, yeah.
Comes back. He had never actually died.
He didn't die. They faked his death.
Yeah, they learned about the murder plot and let it go off beforehand. This is the owner of the mill.
Yeah.
Which of course changes a lot of things in the meta landscape, because if he's not dead, that means Josie doesn't have control of the property in the mill, so there's no way that it's going to be purchased by the Horns, so Ben Horn, so they can develop the new development with the Europeans and all of that. Mm-hmm. So basically, it like kind of subverts all of that stuff,
all the stuff that was the key storylines of the first season.
Yeah, it was all like foundational stuff, and I actually liked that plot line, that whole kind of meta plot, like, oh, you thought you knew what was happening, but now this character who, Josie, who seemed like kind of Machiavellian, actually she was being manipulated by this other person.
Right.
And the whole plot was foiled in advance, and the whole mill thing is not up for grabs, and so that obviously spurs Ben Horn on to opposing the development because it wouldn't benefit him at all anymore.
Yes, it's Andrew Packard.
There we go. Andrew Packard.
The cast is so sprawling. It's hard to keep track of everyone.
There's too many people. It's insane.
There's 3 people from RoboCop in this cast, and I think that has to be. That can't be a coincidence. I feel like someone was like, someone saw that movie and was picking people out of it.
Yeah, absolutely. There were some surprise characters in here. Mm-hmm. So let's talk real quick about randomly added love interest plot lines.
Oh, okay.
So
Dick Tremaine,
who
I mean, I hate the character. He is sort of fun sometimes, but none of his stories matter at all.
No, he's ultimately completely pointless. He is there to be an obstacle to Andy. Yeah. That's really his only purpose.
Yeah.
But Andy actually treats him nice and with respect the whole time.
Andy is a good fella.
Yeah, he never just takes him out and beats him up like you would expect a country sheriff's deputy to do with some fancy guy.
And he's very sensitive, despite the fact that he shot one of those no good Canadians in the first season. He's a very sensitive boy.
Yeah, he's a good dude. So I mean, that character, Dick Tremaine, kind of crazy, but what about Billy Zane's character, who shows up, and his whole thing is that he's one of Ben Horn's super rich guy buddies.
He's a protege of Ben Horn.
Yeah, who's gonna help him turn things around.
Yeah, he the character is John Justice Wheeler, and he is. He's a sort of person that just could not possibly exist, in that he's like a vulture capitalist and rabid environmentalist. Mm-hmm. And it's the two things are so at opposing odds, and he's they give up the capitalist part of it right away, and the environmentalist part becomes his defining character.
Yeah.
But I feel like when they introduce him, Audrey asks him what he does, and he's like, I buy bankrupt businesses that are going bankrupt, and I streamline them and sell them. And I was like, okay, why are we treating this guy like he's the noble hero?
Yeah, you got Mitt Romney on the show.
Yeah, exactly. But he's Mitt Romney that looks like a young Elvis and cares a lot about the environment.
And dresses like he's from New Mexico.
Yeah. But he was supposed to it's weird because it all feels kind of half-baked with him. Mm-hmm. He shows up underdeveloped and kind of goes in a different direction, I think, than they intended.
Well, and he's credited on the, the pre-roll as guest starring. So, they're oh, we got a big name here. This is kind of a big deal. No, not at all.
But it has more to do with the number of episodes they're in, I think, whether they're a guest star. Because there's there are the core cast, then there's feature or series regulars, and then there's the guest stars who the core cast are going to be in basically every episode.
Yeah,
but guest stars are going to be here and there. Like Miguel Ferrer shows up like every 3 episodes or so.
Yeah, it's so he's a random love interest for Audrey.
Yeah.
He doesn't really serve any purpose in the story other than to be Audrey's love interest.
Basically, and to be sort of the catalyst for the face turn that Ben Horne makes.
After the most pointless and probably the single lamest subplot in the entire season.
Do you think his Civil War
where
delusion?
he thinks he's General Robert E. Lee,
Yeah.
and he is utterly delusional and mad for
like 6 episodes.
Yeah, for like a third of the season or something. Yeah, that's the worst plot line.
Okay.
It was utterly pointless. If there was a reason, I would have been fine with it, but there wasn't.
Well,
It didn't link to anything.
there is not a reason other than that he comes out a different person on the other side of it.
So he had a nervous breakdown and came back healed, but it was like the lamest...
He came back determined to be good, but it was the lamest nervous breakdown because...
He thinks he's like one of the great villains of history and then comes back.
Yeah.
Why didn't they just go with the Führer?
And he fights the Civil War. He relitigates the Civil War to where the South wins.
Mm-hmm.
And that's his big breakthrough when he gets to the end of it. Yeah, okay, I'll give you that as... It's in the running for the worst new storylines. But I'm really not fond of little Nicky the Orphan.
Oh, that's true.
Not so much...
Did he murder his parents?
No.
He didn't. They just thought he did because he was kind of a creep.
Yeah. The thing about that story, besides how pointless it was the fact that it just gets expositioned away at the end of it. Mm-hmm. Doc Hayward sits them all down and basically tells them, little Nicky's had a really hard time and it's mean of you to think he's a murderer. Mm-hmm. And everyone feels like suitably like ashamed of themselves for ever having thought that. And the story just disappears. Little Nicky's never mentioned again. It's all over. No one adopted him. He goes back to the orphanage.
Yeah, I mean, like in modern terms, it's like they would just say he's undergone significant trauma and had adverse childhood experiences, so he's maladaptive to social situations, and you all assumed the worst. Yeah. You're terrible.
Yeah.
Let's put him back in a cage.
And he does... Really, what does he do? He honks the car horn. He blows whipped cream in Dick Tremaine's face.
He just wanted attention the whole time.
Yeah.
Everything he did was attention-seeking kid things.
Yeah, it is not even bad kid stuff.
No.
It's just kid wanting you to look at him.
Because when he was chided for honking the horn, he stopped. Yeah. And he went and stood next to Dick.
Yeah.
It's like, bro, like, if a kid stops when you tell them to stop, that's a good kid.
Yeah. So Ben Horne, Civil War general, pretty bad story. Little Nicky the Orphan, pretty bad story.
I just like that he was called Little Nicky because that's what you were called when you were a kid.
That is what I was called growing up.
And I was like, yeah, Little Nicky's a bad boy.
I'm biased to be sympathetic to him and angry at those adults.
Well, yeah, I mean, I've worked with kids for a long time, and I'm just like, man, there's nothing wrong with this kid. He's just, like the doctor said, he's had a rough time of things. Why don't you just be cool to him?
It was like his parents died, and then his first adopted family also died horrifically in a flaming car wreck. Yeah.
And they were just really bad to him. And they didn't adopt him because, Lucy got pregnant, so they didn't need Nicky anymore, right?
Well, Nicky, they were literally... Dick Tremaine was being a big brother to little Nicky just to prove...
That he could be a good dad.
That he could prove that he was a good dad, yeah.
Oof.
Yeah, that whole thing. Let's see. What other pointless stories? We already mentioned it, but it's got to be way up there, too. James and Evelyn.
Oh, yeah. So
I hate that story.
So James goes off and becomes like the live-in mechanic for an ultra-rich lady whose husband comes in and out of town and occasionally beats the hell out of her.
That is the story we are told.
Yes, but really, it's the driver who they say is her brother but isn't.
Yeah.
Who's actually doing it.
He's actually the one that beats her. He's not her brother. I sussed it out immediately.
I was like, that guy's a creep. I can tell.
And I thought, she's going to try and get this guy to kill her husband. Because I'm very suspicious of cougars. Ever since I saw that that movie, the one with Nicole Kidman and Joaquin Phoenix from the late 90s. And I was like, oh, anytime a doofus like this starts getting hit on by a sexy cougar, she's going to try and get him to kill her husband. That's just always what happens.
Yeah, so like at first I was thinking like, okay, so this plot line, it's doomed from the start because they're asking James, who's the name of the actor who plays James.
Right.
They're asking James to play a dramatic role when really his face is carved from wood. He just can't. He can say lines like Pinocchio, just sort of say them emotionless, and then run off and get on his motorcycle. That's his whole thing.
Yeah,
he says a thing passionlessly, and then runs off and gets on the motorcycle.
He's pretty good at looking hornily at Donna.
Okay,
but that's probably not acting.
He can just leer. Yeah, he channels his inner self and is just leering.
I feel like James is really horny right now.
Yeah, so I knew it was doomed from the beginning, and then when the plot started unraveling a bit, you meet the driver brother.
Yeah,
and I'm like, that's kind of sus. Like, they don't really look that much alike, and he like who would really the lady have her would a rich lady have her brother
as the chauffeur?
As a chauffeur that lives in servants' quarters? That's your family.
Yeah.
Maybe they drive you sometimes, but they wouldn't be treated like servant.
Yeah.
So he's hiding out, and then when you meet the actual husband, he's not a bad guy. He seems chill. Like he's just like a kind of an annoying rich guy, but he doesn't seem like he's gonna do anything.
I did sort of think when the husband showed up, he's gonna be hateable because we know he's gonna die. Like, because that's just the way the show is.
Yeah.
You know he's definitely going to die. And I thought, this guy's going to show up and you're just going to instantly hate him. And he is super chill and clearly getting done dirty by his hot wife.
Yeah, she's just spending all his money and whatever.
And you're like, wait a minute.
She's way out of his league.
You're like, hold on. He's not even bad. And we're going to kill this guy.
Yeah, he's just like, he is a dupe.
Yeah.
He's just a rube.
Yeah, just like James. Like it's the so-called brother and sister team are just bringing in rubes to do crime with.
Yeah, that plot line was like it was all I could do to keep watching. Like,
yeah, that the show went from being something that fairly had me on the edge of my seat, like where I had a hard time not watching more than 3 episodes a night, to a show that became a phoner. Like certain characters would show up on screen and I'd be like, what's going on the internet? And pull my phone out.
Yeah, once we got into the malaise of the teens episodes numbers, I was having a hard time choking them down.
Yeah.
It was just like, oh man, this is, I actively don't want to watch this.
Yeah. The first 10 are on fire.
Yeah, the first 10 you're like, whoa, what the fuck is happening?
Yeah, it's really cooking, and we're starting to find out more and more stuff like about Killer Bob.
The demon is like crazy in this
and like
season.
and I was like, whoa, people are crazy. Season 2 actually fucking rules.
Yeah, mass like possession and crazy stuff happening. And I mean, I even liked the Wyndham Earl plot with Agent Dale Cooper's former colleague or whatever who's gone bad and he's now like a murderer or whatever.
Yeah, and Wyndham Earl is like a raising specter through the whole season that becomes more and more present as it goes on. So all that stuff is working really good.
And also there were some really great plot moments with the Major, like when he gets abducted and he comes back, and you get way more Log Lady. She's definitely like, she's kind of clutch in this season with the information. And then when they go and they investigate the Owl Cave and they see all the symbology and all this stuff.
But then that's happening in the back 6, like the cave and everything. That's when it's clicked back into
there's like a middle act 2 badness that I was not impressed with.
But the Major's disappearance, I think, kind of stretches through that part too. So it's one of the plots that it's one, like, otherwise you could just skip over like 6 episodes, but there is like something that happens in all of them, like the stuff that happens with Josie, which, unless, I mean, maybe it gets dealt with in the return, but I don't think we know how her spirit gets sucked into that drawer. Like, as of right now, me with having seen the newer material, I have no idea what's going on with Josie.
Oh, I forgot. We missed one of the other worst plot lines that's tied.
I knew there was another one.
It was tied for badness with the Robert E. Lee, and the James goes and becomes a mechanic idiot.
I think I know what it is.
Nadine goes to high school.
Oh, no, I was thinking
Nadine, the grown-ass woman, starts banging a high school dude.
Yeah.
And he falls in love with her after being harangued by her, like preyed upon. Well, he eventually turns, and then...
we call it grooming now, but it's romantic the way they show it.
Yeah, exactly. She groomed the hell out of him. And then the whole plot line, and you're like, okay, well, at least Big Ed is getting to leave this weird marriage of his and go and be with the love of his life. And then Nadine gets bonked on the head, and it's all reversed.
Oof.
And they're like, really? I was rooting for Ed.
And by the end, I was rooting for Mike, too.
Yeah.
And I was rooting for Nadine, who seemed like...
She finally was happy?
Yeah, she was finally happy. It seemed like...
It was really weird, because she could have been his wife. Or his mom.
His mom.
She's in her 30s, and he's a high schooler.
Well, like he said to Bobby... You have no idea what the combination of sexual maturity and super strength is capable
and just
of.
Miraculously, she had super strength.
You know, to be fair, she had it in the first season, too.
That's true. She bent the metal. She bent the metal exercise machine. Yeah.
And she had, like... It didn't occur to me till I was kind of, like, watching videos and back matter and stuff, that all the workout equipment there, it's not Ed's. It's hers. Like, she's the one lifting weights and stuff, and like, she's the fitness nut, and she was always super strong for whatever reason. It is not explained why she's super strong ever.
Yeah, that plot line was tired.
Yeah.
Like, every time, because it was long. It just kept
the entire season.
It kept popping up, like, just slowly but surely. We're like, oh, we got another Nadine wearing a bow in her hair and saddle shoes and skipping around in a Letterman jacket. We got another scene of this, and then we got, and just... It just, every time it popped up, I was like, cringe, ugh, gross.
Yeah.
This is pedophilia or grooming or whatever. Even if he's barely 18, this is still wrong.
Wendy Robbie is who plays Nadine Hurley. And yeah, I agree with you. Absolutely. I hate that story and was always cringing about it. By the end of it, when it wrapped up, I was like, I'm happy with how this has ended.
I'm happy that it ended.
Yeah. And then she gets her memories back and the whole thing unravels. And I was like, well, I hate this now.
And why do people keep hiring the psychologist guy? He's clearly a crank.
Well, I think he's just the only...
He's the only one.
He's the only guy in town.
They hired him to be like a divorce counselor, like a marriage counselor, to talk them through ending their union.
Well, they needed to trick someone who wasn't in their right mind into signing divorce papers, basically. Someone who... really was not capable of making legally binding decisions.
Well, and ultimately, Ed was willing to let her get tricked into doing it, but he wasn't willing to just walk up to her with papers and say, hey, Nadine, you need to sign these, because remember how we talked about breaking up?
Yeah.
These are the breakup papers.
These are official breakup papers. I had to get them at the courthouse.
Because you're going steady with Mike now. Yeah, he didn't have the cojones to do that himself.
Or
so he was going to
say he was too ethical.
Well, I mean, he was trying to legitimize it by hiring a known quack to con her into it, or to give his psychological blessing that this was okay.
Yeah.
It's just weird, man.
He was deferring to experts. Is what he was.
He's trusting scientists.
Yeah, exactly.
So did you come up with a bad plot that I had forgotten?
Oh, I was going to say Comatose Leo is got to be in the running.
Yeah, Leo monster.
Yeah.
Whatever. He starts off, he's literally a
vegetable.
He's a vegetable. He's nonverbal. He's in his wheelchair. Slowly but surely, he gets a little more movement. And this goes over 22 episodes. It starts in the beginning and it ends at the end. And he eventually becomes basically like a shock-collared slave gimp to Wyndham Earl.
Yeah.
And it's like, what the hell? What are we doing here?
So the Leo monster, as you call it, boy, I hated that all through most of it, right? As they're feeding him baby food, and Bobby is like fucking off to become Ben Horn's assistant.
Yeah, I hate Bobby. Still.
I kind of come around to like Bobby as the show goes on.
He's a lovable scumbag.
Yeah, he is just a charming heel through the whole thing.
He's basically like Ben Horn Jr.
Yeah, which is why he wants to be. He's who Justice or whatever Jack Justice should be if he was really someone that was mentored by Ben Horn. But this so let's break this down. So Hank shot Leo last season, and Leo was in a coma because of it. Bobby gets the bright idea. We bring him home instead of, or not we, you, Shelley, bring your abusive husband home as a vegetable, and you, Bobby, and Shelley get the insurance money for taking care of Leo, and all you have to do is devote your whole life to taking care of this invalid.
And the money, it's like $750 a month.
Yeah, before taxes.
Yeah.
Because when they actually get the check, it's like $300.
Yeah.
And so ultimately, and Bobby just abandons Shelley for most of the season.
Yeah, he's basically like, well, that cash cow didn't pay off.
Yeah. I'm on to the next scheme. And so Shelley is saddled with changing the diapers of her abuser, basically. And it's just a bummer, and it's awful.
It really feels bad for everybody.
For like 15 episodes, it just is suck. And then Leo comes back to life and wants revenge and kind of zombies off into the woods after trying to kill Shelley and failing. And he's found by Wyndham Earl, and then Wyndham Earl pulls a reek from Game of Thrones on him. Mm-hmm. And that's all miserable, too. Like, I hated all of that.
I mean, I hated Leo in season 1. He was completely with no redeeming factors. But I also don't believe in, like, torture. Even bad people.
Honestly, like, by the end of his reek conditioning thing that went on, I finally felt bad for him. There was, like... It was the episode where he got the remote control to the shock collar, but didn't understand that the button wasn't the thing that caused the shock.
Oh, it was the collar, yeah.
And then he shocked himself, and I felt like a sort of wretched pity for Leo for the first time. And I was like, well, they did it. They finally tortured this guy enough that I felt bad for him. Like, I was like, I don't like this. I don't like to see a deranged simpleton getting tortured. It's like, it's awful.
Yeah, it says more about you if you do like it than it does about the depiction, because it's like, that's
like when he just had him captive, I kind of felt like this guy had it coming.
Yeah, he's a bad guy. He done a lot of bad things.
Yeah.
So, turnabout, he's getting some karmic retribution.
Yeah, but it went too far, even for karma.
Yeah. Wyndham Earl, very terrible person.
He really was. He was a great villain, like a cartoonish, mustache twirling, scenery chewing, like ridiculous villain. Like, He's like an evil Inspector Clouseau from the Pink Panther movies.
Yeah, pretty much.
Because he does all these weird disguises and
Oh
everything.
yeah, he's a master of disguise. Nobody
Yeah.
can see him. When he dresses up like a lady, he's a lady.
Yeah, he totally he does the log lady and fools Bobby.
Yeah.
And even when Bobby gets up close to him, he thinks this must be the log lady's sister or something.
Yeah. He fooled Andy too.
Oh yeah, but Andy also is very simple.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But I like Andy, so so Wyndham Earl and Bob together, it's like you have this supernaturally horrible villain and you just have a deranged human villain, and it's some, they have some true darkness in this show.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, we got like the Black Lodge. That's kind of revealed as ultimately like the great evil of the show, right?
It's a hell dimension, right?
Yeah.
I guess that's what I would call it.
Yeah, demi-plane if you're a D&D player.
Yeah. It is it's the place. Well, Cooper has been having visions both from the White Lodge and the Black Lodge.
Even since season 1, just the whole time.
Because the giant comes from the White Lodge. I think that's fairly clear.
Yeah.
And the little man he's our representative for the Black Lodge, and so is
I was
Killer
doing
Bob.
his little dance earlier.
Oh, were you?
When I was talking to Carrie.
Were you
I was
dancing
doing his
backwards?
yeah, in the backwards walk.
So, do you know the story of Ronnie Rocket, which is one of David Lynch's unmade films that he tried to get made
no.
for years? So, Ronnie Rocket was supposed to star that guy who plays the little man. I'll have to look at our cast list to remember his
It's
name.
a huge mile long.
I know, it's so hard to pick one person out of it. But essentially, it's about like that guy playing a rockabilly Frankenstein that's powered by electricity, and his name is Ronnie Rocket. And it's a movie.
Why has it got to be him though? Like,
Because David Lynch just really likes that little guy.
Okay.
He thought he had something, and like, you know, backwards talking aside, he does have like, he's got a weird little swagger to him.
He's got a weird charm.
Yeah, and I can kind of like, because he wears that red suit, and I was imagining him with the Ronnie Rocket pompadour that always gets described, and I was like, I can see him as a rockabilly Frankenstein. I could see this. That would have been a major cult classic movie if it ever got made.
Rockabilly Frankenstein sounds like the name of an album in the genre.
It is probably the name of several like psychobilly albums.
Yeah.
There's people Googling, has anyone ever actually made an album called Rockabilly Frankenstein? Yep, 7.
Okay, we got to change it up. We're going to call it Frankenbilly. Oh, there's 5 of those.
Yeah. But yeah, so that guy was almost Ronnie Rocket.
Okay, well, I mean, that's really interesting. And it's like we had weird visions early and late in the season.
Yeah.
Not a lot in the middle.
The visions come with David Lynch.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it's clear he's not around for vast sections of it. The lady that played Lucy, Kimmy Robertson, in David Lynch's memoir, she's interviewed quite a bit, and she talks about how she was really frustrated with season 2 because essentially they kept introducing things to keep her mad at Andy. And she was just like over it, and she said that the show felt different when David Lynch wasn't present. Like, whether he's directing the episode or not, when he wasn't there, like being hands-on with it in some way, the show just wasn't the same.
Oh yeah, I can definitely see that. Speaking of her, how about that Miss Twin Peaks pageant at the end? What a use of airtime.
The Miss Twin Peaks
full cabaret dancing and the whole deal from all of the female cast in the city, basically.
Yeah.
If you're a gal and you're under 40, you're dancing in this line.
I guess you do have to be under 40 because Norma doesn't participate in it. The Miss Twin Peaks was strange. It was a strange thing, but it was something to put I guess, who was going to be the person that Wyndham Earle killed, make a mystery out of that. Like, it is a paper-thin, flimsy plot device. Which reminds me of the other plot device, the sexy redhead lady that marries old men, the Black Widow character.
Yes.
Because she's a big driver of that whole thing.
Yeah, she marries the owner of the newspaper, and he has a heart attack on their wedding night, and the Kama Sutra was the murder weapon, according to his brother, who then hooks up with her and is all about her.
Yeah.
And she's trying to get him to marry her so she can...
But after she wins the Miss Twin Peaks contest. It is definitely implied she has magic seductive powers.
Yeah, she's called a witch many times.
And all of the men, even the most stalwart men like Agent Cooper, are stupefied by her.
Yeah, at the minimum, even like Big Ed gives her a second look.
Yeah. And like when she's just like talking and joking around, everyone is just hanging on her every word. And that goes nowhere. Maybe this was something we were going to get further into in season 2.
Maybe there would be oh yeah, she's actually some crazy, whatever, she's a spirit, she's the deer lady, or whatever. But no, none of that.
She gives Dick Tremaine a hand job in the pantry, which is pretty funny.
Oh, Dick Tremaine.
Can you imagine wanting to win a small town beauty contest so bad as to give the guy from the department store a hand job in a closet?
He sells men's fashions. Of course he's fashionable.
He's only fashionable in the town of Twin Peaks.
Yes.
I think Big Ed is more stylish than Dick Tremaine is.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yes, she earns that.
But then she doesn't win. Even she gave a hand job for nothing.
Yeah, the speech by the Norma's sister, who comes back from the convent, whose sole job in the story seems to be Agent Dale Cooper's love interest. So he actually finds love. That's her whole purpose.
Yeah, so basically
Annie Blackburn.
Yeah, and played by Heather Graham, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So originally the plan is for Cooper and Audrey to get together. That's seeded all through the
That's obvious, yeah.
Seeded all through the first season. But it was Laura Flynn Boyle that plays Donna pointed out it's very inappropriate for Cooper to get involved with the high school girl.
Absolutely.
And so rightly they introduce someone who's supposed to be an age-appropriate love interest.
Yeah.
But the weird thing about it is Heather Graham is younger than the lady that plays Audrey. So
yeah, she looked to be about 20 years old, about that.
So you have his age appropriate love interest is younger than the girl that we have determined in real life is younger than the person that was set up to be his love interest. And then we introduce a love interest for Audrey, who's still an adult man that's too old.
Yeah, he seems like he's in his early 30s. He's still a good 12 years too old to be dating her.
Yeah, and he has this backstory where he remembers seeing her as a 10-year-old dressed up like Heidi. And
it's no good.
That's always that's a weird thing to say. Like, oh, I remember seeing you when you were 10 years old and I've remembered you ever since. And you're like, oh, geez.
Yeah,
no,
that's not
bad. It would have been. I would have been happier with Cooper and Audrey just getting together than giving her a grown man and him a young escaped nun.
Yeah, I mean, after the season cut, it would have been very easy for them to be like,
and then Audrey graduated.
Be like, well, you graduated high school and you're 18. You're an adult, grown-up adult American person with their own rights and individual decision-making, so I guess it now can be okay. Yeah, that would have been a better, and that's sort of how Dale talks about things. It would have been more appropriate than this weird, let's bring in 2 new actors to be love interests.
Yeah.
And let's have them go nowhere and do nothing.
And to be fair, though, Billy Zane is, 6 years younger than Kyle MacLachlan.
Okay.
So he is a bit younger, but still too old to date a high schooler.
Yeah. I mean, I will say, despite the fact that I'm criticizing the plot line and saying that the new love interests were lame, I actually did like Annie Blackburn. I thought she was really relatable and a nice person, and I was rooting for Dale.
I mean, character-wise, she was a good match for him. She was another Spectrum-y sort of eccentric character.
Mm-hmm.
She had a sort of a tragic backstory. Obviously, she has scars on her wrists from a failed suicide attempt.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, whatever mental health problems she was going through led her to join a convent,
which is being very religious is its own kind of mania.
Yeah. But then that didn't work out either, and she's come back home. But it never treats her like a victim or damaged goods or any of that stuff. That is something I think the show does really well. It never treats women that way. Like the girls, like Audrey was trapped in a brothel for like days, and Cooper is never sort of like. There's none of that weird morality stuff that you would normally get.
The show is surprisingly, well, not surprisingly, because of who David Lynch is. And, but
it's pretty progressive.
Yeah, it's progressive. They have David Duchovny plays a transgender DEA agent, Denise Bryson.
Yeah, I was just thinking of that too.
And that is... in the early 90s, that like wasn't even a thing. They would call her like a female impersonator or something like that.
Yeah.
Like it was totally not in the zeitgeist.
And it is, and Cooper is strong ally, right? Like Cooper, he calls her Dennis. He dead names her, right? When she first shows up, and she goes, actually, I prefer Denise. He goes, okay.
He's like, sorry.
Yeah.
And then Denise is like, it's okay.
Yeah. And he slips up once and she corrects him again. And then he never slips up again through the rest of the show.
Yeah. I like seeing that. I think that's a wholesome interaction because Dale's a good dude and Denise knows Dale's a good dude. He's just known them for a long ass time, you know? And so old habits die hard, but he's trying. And so it's just a good interaction. It's a good way to be. Like if someone transitions, if you fuck up, just fix it, say you're sorry, move on.
Yeah.
You know, like it is what it is. Dale is the most wholesome of people. If he does it, certainly it's okay if you do it.
Yeah. And because of the weird way that everyone in the sheriff's office sort of hero worships Dale from the moment he shows up, everyone just takes their cues from him, and they're like, if Coop's fine with it, I'm fine with it.
Yeah, exactly. Like as soon as Dale is fine with it, Harry's fine with it, and then everyone's fine with it.
Yeah. And so, yeah, I thought it's really interesting to watch how that was portrayed in just very well, and that's an early David Duchovny appearance, as far as I know.
And the saying, the line from the show is stuck around: "Fix your heart or die."
Oh yeah, in the post-election period, that has become such a meme, like printed on shirts and everything.
Yeah, that's a Lynchism right there.
Man, fucking A, that's the truth. We can't go back. No matter what the forces of conservatism,
the Black Lodge, we'll call them,
that is pushing society backwards right now, it will not go back.
Yeah, you know everything changes in regardless of what you feel is progress or a bad change. Change will happen. How you deal with it is up to you.
Yeah.
That's just life.
It's like we're going through the very painful death throes of a lot of different ways of thinking right now, and they're thrashing violently. But time just marches on, no matter whether you want it to or not.
And it's crazy, and easy to it's crazy to think and easy to vilify older generations, like say the boomers. They're actually should have just been called the worst generation or whatever.
The Gen X, we're starting to give them a run for their money as being awful.
But David Lynch was a boomer, and he was awesome, and he wrote all these great lines, and him and Mark Frost wrote all this cool open-minded stuff that it's not like weird or like radical. It's just decent. And that's what's striking about the show, is that they don't make a point of it. They just are decent.
It is. No matter, with all of the darkness that is going on, certain people stay good no matter what.
Yeah, I think that's a one of the things I like about this show is that good guys tend to stay good. There are some turns, like some people change, but like real people, usually your core identity, like where your heart lies, it kind of stays where it is. You know, you're not gonna change your stripes, and that's interesting.
The only person I think over the course of the show that makes not just a character growth, but a full alignment change is Ben Horn.
Do you really think that he made an alignment change? I interpreted that he opposed the Ghostwood development not because he became a rabid environmentalist, but because he was just against Catherine and her brother Packard, because he had essentially been cheated out of the multi-million-dollar deal of a lifetime. He didn't actually become a good guy. It was just convenient to take the mantle of a good guy while opposing his enemies.
That is definitely how it starts. And then when you get to the other side of his Civil War delusion, he's legitimately trying. And that's backed up, by the people around him. I don't think they ever justify why he's doing it, but like he's actually making the effort to change for some reason. Perhaps they were going to continue exploring that in a third season if it happened, because there's a lot of unanswered questions at the end of this series.
Oh, absolutely.
I was shocked with how all of the cliffhangers that it left us in the final episode, like with the bomb going off.
Oh, yeah.
Cooper having Killer Bob inhabiting him. There's so much stuff, and it's
it ends with way more questions than it started with.
Yeah, and it was 25 years before the return happened, which is foreshadowed in the show. That's what Laura, or the shadow self of Laura, tells Cooper in the Red Room is, "I'll see you in 25 years."
Yeah, that is crazy.
Yeah, but how upset people were by the finale makes sense to me now after having seen it. Like,
because nothing
is resolved. Yeah. And then when the movie came out, the movie's a prequel, and it doesn't answer any of these questions.
Yeah, the movie doesn't really have anything to do with the end. Yeah. So that's difficult. So as far as like our normal categories of like visual and audio and performances, they really are very similar to last time. So let's just talk about anything that changed. What do you think in the visual category do you think is worth bringing up?
So we've got cinematography by Frank Byers. He was present for much of season 1, but crucially not the pilot episode. He is the only cinematographer for season 2. And then same thing, production designs by Richard Hoover for the whole of season 2. The art direction changes after episode 11. Okawita departs and Daniel Proet comes on board. Something that I just noticed is there's a lot more visible product placement in season 2. And I thought that was interesting because I didn't really see any of that. And all of a sudden, the husband that's going to get killed by the lady with the James and Evelyn's husband.
Yeah.
Wears a full-on Air Jordan tracksuit.
Yeah.
Cooper, when he's defrocked by the FBI, wears exclusively Pendleton Woolen Mill board shirts.
Yes.
For that whole interlude of the season. There's a scene where Audrey walks around carrying an armload of Pendleton blankets.
Yes.
And there's just a lot of visible brand placement.
It seemed like Billy Zane's character wore a lot of Pendleton.
He
as
wore
well.
a lot of Pendleton. Catherine wears a pretty dope Pendleton coat, like this big coat with the hood and everything.
She's definitely in on that style.
That's Northwest ballin' to have like the heavy Pendleton gear.
Those are pretty expensive.
Yeah. But there was just a lot of that weird brand placement stuff that I kind of put on some of the new people being involved that are more open to bald-faced consumerism in the show.
Yeah, it really did feel like the first season was like art house.
Yeah.
And this was way more corporate.
Yeah, like this is how you do a TV show. Brand partnerships, mitigate the cost of production. And that's true. And Pendleton in particular suits the vibe of the show.
Oh, yeah, for sure. The Great Northern, just that whole lodge vibe.
But there's another, I think Ben Horn wears like a Fila tracksuit. Like there's just a few, like when they're not paid brand sponsorships, logos are always obscured. But if you can read the logo clearly, like and it faces the camera, that was paid for. Like that's just a general rule. And I just saw a ton of it in this season that there was paid brand appearances.
Huh. Yeah, I mean that makes sense. I noticed that too. Another thing that I kind of noticed about this was the cinematography felt a lot more crisp and a lot more regular TV show. Yeah. It did not feel dreamy. It didn't feel this like there wasn't as much distortion. There wasn't as much filtering. The lighting was way more standard. Whereas in the first season, it just felt like you were like looking through a glass into the past.
Yeah, there was a few episodes. Because it does become just very bog standard soap opera directing.
Yeah.
There was a few where I was like, okay, did David Lynch direct this one? Because he directed 1, 2, 7, and then the final episode, 22.
Okay.
And there was a few episodes where I was like, did he direct this one? And they were directed not by him, but by his colleagues. Like Caleb Deschanel came back and directed episode 8 and 12. Who's one of his film school buddies, and Diane Keaton of Annie Hall directed episode 15, and hers was hella dreamy. Like, it's the final one of the James and Evelyn story, and there's some like real sort of like watery effects on the camera where things get wobbly and everything, and I was like, oh, Diane Keaton's getting real arty with the trashiest storyline in the whole
that storyline is so bad.
Yeah. Oh, and Stephen Yellenhall, Jake and Maggie's father, directed episode 20, and his had some pretty Lynchy moments too. So there was but the sort of artily directed episodes in the back half of the season become few and far between, to where I would look it up like, who directed this episode, and check on it.
So speaking of fathers, and later in the season, what do you think about Ben Horn being Donna's real father?
I didn't see it coming.
Is that the plot we needed? Did it have any relevance to anything? Or was it just drama to have drama?
I don't know. It was drama for the sake of drama, and I don't know why it was there other than to be something for Ben Horn, who's newly developed morality, to try and have something that he's confused about of what the right course of action is to do. Like, and then Dr. Hayward maybe kills him.
He just bashes him. We don't know what happens.
Yeah, he punches him, and then he hits his head on the fireplace, which I don't know. A lot of times that kills people in these type of shows.
For sure.
When you do a header into the like the brick fireplace, sometimes that's a wrap.
Why couldn't Donna just let it lie?
Yeah, I mean, it is a lot to let lie. Like, is the town villain really my father?
I mean, and why is he sending flowers to his baby mama?
That is the worst part of it, because he has a wife.
Yeah.
And she doesn't, like, we don't see her all season long. She doesn't show up until episode 22.
Yeah.
And she comes in there right as the whole thing is going down. And she's like, what are you doing to these poor people? And like, so obviously every adult is in on the secret that he's actually Donna's father, including his wife. Like, they all know. They all seem to know. No one wants to tell her for whatever reason.
She could have had another sister growing up.
She could have. And they do, like, they start doing her and Audrey's makeup similarly.
Yeah, I noticed that they started looking very similar.
Yeah, so, like, by the time you have the Miss Twin Peaks pageant, they almost have the same hairdo and the same, like, eyebrows and everything. Like, they've sort of began morphing towards each other. I don't know. I'm fine with that story, but it was not additive.
It wasn't very additive.
It was just another one of those things where it is only complicating. It is not enhancing.
Exactly, for sure. Anyway, so we were talking about visuals.
Yeah.
I felt like this season was just more. It was like season 1, but more sterile and less arty.
Yeah.
Other than that, I did not find anything to be remarkable.
Yeah, it's when it gave you the season 1 feels was the remarkable thing.
Yes.
Because especially as the season went on, it just started to be a weekly TV show. Like, it just feel like that. Like,
it's like watching old rerun or old DVDs or whatever of the Highlander show where they had like 42 episodes per season.
Yeah.
And you're just like, oh, these episodes mean nothing.
Yeah.
This is just filler.
It is just filler. Yeah. Which is, that is the model that you always had. You had to have at least, it was 20 something. And once you had a block of whatever it was, like 27 episodes, which obviously they hit with their 8 and their 22.
You could get syndication money.
Then you can sell it into syndication, and then it'll run forever on cable or on local networks. And they make it to whatever number they had to make it to, and in order to get there, they filled it with just a lot of fluff.
Yeah, just tons of fluff.
Yeah.
So as far as the audio stuff goes, we have so much Angelo Badalamenti's more of the same.
Yeah.
Every time I hear like the jazzy organ or the bass and the Rhodes piano, I'm just like, oh, you want it to be light and levity right now.
Which track is it? Do you think that bugs you? Because I was listening to the score today, and I think it is Freshly Squeezed. I think
that's the name of it. Yeah,
yeah,
it's terrible
because because you cued in on the stand-up bass, and most of the songs have a stand-up bass in them. Like, it's very much bass and keyboards, all of these tracks. But that Freshly Squeezed, I think, is the theme for the diner. It's like it's generally what plays there. But then they also
play it when they want you to laugh and that sort of thing.
Yeah, it comes up a lot. But yeah,
we got more of that.
I like the score. I think it's a good score. But I've been like listening to it carefully. I'm like, which is the one that bugs Dave? Which song is
I like the opener.
Yeah.
I like the really heavy synth laden spooky tracks, like Anything in the Woods or whatever. But man, some of that stuff just drives me up the wall.
Yeah, which is Twin Peaks theme, or when it has vocals by Julie Cruz on it, it's called Falling. But yeah, that's the song that people think of. Audrey's Dance is another one of those, like, it becomes her theme, and it's another stand-up bass heavy song, but it's not it's like it's like her. It's slinkier. It's not bop. Like, it's not like a I don't know. It's not silly. It's more of a sexy song.
Okay.
There is some stuff like because James has sort of like a rockabilly guitar song that's not on the soundtrack album.
Okay, yeah.
So there's some other music in there that maybe you find annoying. I don't
Most
know.
of it. I think about 60%. I don't
like it. Interesting.
No.
I like it. I listened to the score a few times today, and I enjoy it generally.
Okay.
You have a couple songs that have vocals, and they're interesting because David Lynch writes the lyrics for them.
Okay.
So the song Julie Cruz sings in the final episode, "Falling," is the theme again, but with lyrics by David Lynch. And the song "Sycamore Trees," performed by Jimmy Scott in the final episode, is also has lyrics by Lynch and the music by Badalamenti.
Okay. I mean, and also, or it doesn't happen much in this season, but anytime that what's his name, the lawyer guy, anytime he sings, like doing, like
Leland Palmer.
Yeah, anytime Leland sings, thumbs down.
Oh, you don't like the mares eat oats and goats eat oats? Lambs eat ivy?
I hate that song, and I also don't like it when he tries to do there's a couple times he tries to sing in the
lounge
Great Northern,
of the hotel,
He tries to do all of that. It's all terrible.
So here's my question about Ben Horn singing, since I forgot to mention it when we were talking about the story. Is the singing Leland Palmer? Yeah. Is the singing Leland trying to maintain control of himself, or is Killer Bob singing? Because he always sings and dances when he's when he's fighting with Bob, essentially. And
I think it could be a manifestation of Leland trying to take control of something.
Yeah, like to take the body from Bob.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, that didn't become clear to me until probably around episode 9 or 10. Or I guess 9 is the one where Leland dies. But in between 7 and 9... it starts to be clear that Leland is in conflict with Bob. Like when Bob takes over and kills Maddie and everything. And so, and so I started reading more into his dancing and stuff, because it always happens when he's resisting Bob.
Yeah, that whole deal where Leland Palmer was the guy that killed Laura Palmer, the whole mystery of the first thing, and then he kills the lookalike cousin as well, and he puts her in the golf bag, and he's taking her to ditch the body, and it's like, man, I wanted more to it than just a bad dad kills a kid. But I mean, he's possessed by a demon, but I think it just was anticlimactic to me.
Do you really think? Oh, that's interesting.
There's all that crazy stuff.
I think we're moving over into performances now.
Sure,
right? Yeah,
sure.
Okay. Because let's see, who is our Leland Palmer?
Ray Wise.
I think Ray Wise's performance in this is incredible. I've never seen the guy do as much acting as he does in this.
No, he normally plays like a really subdued character.
Just
a cop or something.
A bad gangster guy or whatever. And like his death scene is legit moving. Like he fully describes being molested as a child, like graphically.
Yeah.
He's like, he talks of, I don't need to repeat what he said, but the way he describes being inhabited by Bob is very clearly about a young person being molested. And I thought it was brutal. Like, I thought it was really a tough performance. And he goes to dark places in this show.
So the reason I didn't love it wasn't because of the performance. I thought the performance was pretty good.
You just don't like the music.
Well, it wasn't just the music. But the reason I didn't like that they chose to have it be Leland or whatever is because it feels like they added that in season 2. It definitely doesn't feel like that was who they had planned on having done it from the beginning with little Easter eggs throughout season 1 to where you could look back and rewatch it and be like, oh, look.
Yeah.
It really feels like that. They were like, okay, so
It's gotta be someone who
could have done it?
Yeah.
Who can we say is possessed by Bob, who we also invented during the filming of the thing? Because they were writing on an evolving level. They didn't have the whole thing structurally planned out, or even just the basics of like, okay, so who killed her?
Yeah.
We got to know that if we're going to be running a grand mystery.
Right.
It feels like they didn't know who they thought was going to kill her. It was going to be somebody that they were hunting for and was a mysterious figure. And then they're like, nope, it was actually the guy in town.
Yeah.
It really felt like lazy storytelling. It didn't feel like Ray Wise did a bad performance.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I don't know, because so much of it gets mythologized. I don't know.
Well, Mark Frost said that he never wanted that to be solved in interviews.
Oh, he just wanted to always
He
be a
wanted
mystery.
Who Killed Laura Palmer to be a lingering mystery that they would pursue, but it would be essentially a cold case where maybe a clue or a copycat or something would come up, and it would be a thing that kind of goes. It would be like an eternal mystery. It would be Dale Cooper's work of his life.
Is trying to figure out who killed Laura.
Yeah, and that's how he wanted it.
That's
but
interesting.
it didn't work out that way.
The impression that I've always gotten from the David Lynch side was that it was intended to be Leland from the start, but Killer Bob seems to be the happy accident part of that.
Okay.
But that, I guess that often happens when you have two people writing together. They have two different
they have different
ideas.
Visions.
Yeah.
It seems to me that
I don't think either of them wanted to reveal it as soon as they did, and that's clear.
Yeah. I think that Mark Frost is a plotter, and David Lynch is a pantser that he basically discovers as he writes. He's a discovery writer, and it really seems like Mark Frost is just a big time, like, lay it all out. I mean, obviously the book he wrote about the prehistory of the setting goes all the way back to Lewis and Clark, and all the things are tied in.
Yeah. So like, you've studied this more than I have. Usually in a mystery like this, who done it should be visible in the first episode, right? Like, traditionally in the structure, like, you'd see the person.
I mean, you don't have to. That's if you're going like really classic noir to where you're really leaning into the very old things. But if you're trying to write a mystery thing, really you have to ask the question. You have to know the answer, and then you want to present clues along the way, like the classic Sherlock Holmes stories, where some clues seem irrelevant, but they're not.
Right.
So, or it's not even recognized as a clue, and then later you're like, oh yeah, check that out. And oftentimes that means that the killer was in plain sight, but not always.
Okay.
The key to the mystery was in plain sight, one way or the other. And in this case, it was not.
Well,
there was no way to know at all. It could have literally been Big Ed.
I mean, Leo was, I think, the most likely suspect from the first episode.
Yeah, everyone thought it was Leo, but it could have been James.
But Killer Bob, we do see Killer Bob like twice in the first episode, right? Because the mom has a vision of him. He's in the mirror, and then he's in Cooper's vision too.
Yeah.
And so that entity killed her, I think, is seated in the first episode. Yeah. But we don't know about inhabiting entities until Mike explains that.
Yeah, we don't know that demons are a thing yet.
Yeah, exactly. And owls are still owls. There's much we don't know about the town of Twin Peaks.
Yeah.
So we went through the cast fairly extensively last episode, but we have some new people. First and foremost, Kenneth Welsh as Wyndham Earl. We've talked about him a bit already. I think it works. Like, he's a little silly and capery as a villain.
Yeah.
But he is in that sort of Joker sense, like the humor and the silliness of him just makes the sinister side scarier almost.
Yeah. I think he was definitely good as a villain. He was a little mustache twirling,
Oh, yeah.
But that's fine. It didn't strike me the wrong way. I kind of enjoyed some of the capering and monologuing.
Mm-hmm.
At times it got to be a bit much, but not too much.
Yeah. What about his hideout? We haven't talked his.
It's like just a weird old cabin in the woods.
Can you imagine like how freaking cold and wet you would be in a cabin that let that much sunlight through all the slats?
Oh yeah.
Out in the Northwest woods, like it would just, even with the little wood stove in it, that thing would be freezing cold most of the
Oh,
time.
absolutely. That was the worst hideout ever. He should have done some improvements.
Just, well, old redneck style, put a tarp over the roof.
Yeah, a couple of tarps.
There's daylight coming through that roof. Like, it was tough. Yeah. Who else we got? We got Ian Buchanan as Dick Tremaine, the menswear salesman. Mm-hmm.
He does a passable douchebag.
What a douchebag. He just is a guy that he is fancy in the town of Twin Peaks. He couldn't cut it in Seattle or even Spokane.
Yeah,
If we're being
he would
realistic.
just be like a basic guy.
Yeah. Heather Grand, we mentioned, came in as
A good performance.
as Annie Blackburn. Yeah, I think she's good.
There's Robin Lively. Yeah.
That's our sexual adventuress, is what the mayor calls her.
Yes, she's the witch.
The witch, yeah, the succubus. Town vixen is Wikipedia's description.
Mm-hmm.
I guess we'll never know what happened to her. And we've mentioned all the new characters.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't mention David Lynch as Gordon Cole.
Oh God.
With
I ever love Gordon Cole?
With the hearing, he's the deafness shtick got old really quick.
Yeah. It seems like a joke just on the way that David Lynch speaks anyway, because he has that sort of shouting delivery that he always does, and they just crank it to 11 for comedic purposes.
Yeah, I mean, he's amusing. It got a little old, but, that's fine.
Yeah. But crucially, the one person he can hear without the hearing aids is Shelley, the waitress. And he strikes up a very tender romance with her that snaps Bobby out of his douchebaggery when he sees.
He's like, "What?"
He sees someone is moving in on Shelley. He finally decides to start acting right and stop chasing after Audrey, which was not going anywhere. She was just she was just trailing him along to get him to do like dirty work for her, basically.
Yeah, well, and I mean, Shelley's still married.
Technically true, but we suspect we are suspecting that Leo was dead up until a certain point, until he shows back up.
Yeah, I mean, either way, they're separated. She can have a relationship. It's just a matter of Bobby's a douche.
Bobby is a douche. I think it's a very shallow pond these people are fishing in for romantic partners. That's why everyone has two of them, and they all overlap with each other. It's
yes, Twin Peaks is one big polycule.
It is an involuntary polycule. All the stuff where you're supposed to have good, healthy boundaries and open discussion. It's the opposite of that.
Yeah. No boundaries, no discussion.
Yeah, is a toxic polycule. It's a poly cesspool.
So what about your personal highlight? What do you got?
Let's get to that. Jeez, I have to scroll through a mile of cast members. My personal highlight is, I talked about it a little bit ago, Leland Palmer's death in episode 9.
Oh, wow.
It is rough. They trick Killer Bob in Leland's body into the cell.
I do like that.
He thinks he's going in as legal advisor to Ben Horn, who they have determined is not the killer, and they're going to release him.
Yes.
But he doesn't know that. Ben is still on the hook, he thinks, and he thinks he's going back to jail. And they get Bob in the cell, and Bob freaks the fuck out when he gets in there. And bashes his head against the wall.
Yes.
And kills Leland. And Leland he previously did not have memories of things that Bob had done through him, but as he dies, as Bob said was going to happen, Leland is left there with the memories of all of the things that
and
he's
he
done.
confesses and cries and all of that.
Yeah, and Cooper lays there, and the sprinklers are all going off because the worst technician in the world came in and tweaked them to be up to code, so they go off really easily now. And so it's like they're in the rain, they're like soaked through with water, and Cooper holds Leland's head in his lap and recites to him from the Tibetan Book of the Dead and helps him like cross over peacefully, and it's fucking rough.
And
like,
all of Leland's tears were lost in time, like
tears
tears
in
in
the rain.
the sprinkler system.
Time's up, time to die.
Exactly.
Yeah. And it was just like, it was heavy, and I was like, wow, this really went. And Hawk and Harry are standing there bearing witness to it solemnly, and like, it's beautiful.
It's
and
a pretty
sad.
heavy moment for sure.
And like, and he does like, and he's like, Cooper's guiding him to the light basically, and he's seeing visions of Laura there in his final moments. And it was just like a really sad ending, and I was like, show's over, right? That's the end of the season.
What was that, like the third or fourth episode or something?
No, it's the 9th episode.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But yeah, there is 13 more episodes after that, and it's like, but to me, like, the show basically concluded there in like under those sprinklers.
Absolutely.
What about you? What was your personal highlight?
So I'm gonna be real with you.
Yeah.
I struggled to find one.
Oh.
I did narrowed it down to, I just thought about, okay, what did I like?
Yeah.
Because the thing is, the glaring bad things shined brighter than the amazing parts, because the amazing parts were like
front loaded,
pale reflections of the season 1 parts.
Okay.
And so they just didn't hit. So the parts I like best about this whole show are, I love the symbolism, and I love the sigils. Like, of course, I love runes.
It's like the stuff in the owl cave.
And so specifically the exploration of the owl cave is my favorite part. And I like the whole deal. And also it hits more because I read the book, The Secret History of Twin Peaks, because the owl cave is like an ancient holy spot that the native tribesmen had revered and known that this is a place for spirits and whatnot since, forever ago. And Meriwether Lewis had written about it in clandestine letters to Thomas Jefferson. So like, I thoroughly enjoyed myself while I was watching the show during that time.
Yeah.
And I thought it was really enjoyable and really good, and I truly liked it.
Yeah. I remember before we started this, you sent me a picture of that glyph. That's
I love the glyph.
That's on the rod that sticks out of the wall.
Yes.
So I knew, like, when we got to that sequence, I was thinking, like, this is the stuff Dave is super into.
Yeah, I like that. All that mystery, occult stuff. That's what I'm into.
Okay.
So that was my favorite part. So what worked for you?
So that's in the back 5. Crucially, we both are picking from the first 10 or the back 5.
Yeah.
But yeah, so what worked for me? Wow, look at my notes, and I was repeating what I was just saying. The first 10 episodes and the last 5 episodes.
Okay.
Those episodes are good. It's like when you get to those last 5, it's like all of a sudden I'm back in. I'm locked back into this. And you can just sort of feel like it's that thing where something is out of alignment, but the wheels are still turning, like when you have a flat tire or whatever. The show had a flat tire for 7 episodes.
Yes.
And when, like, you're back on the road, you're like, okay, we can do this. I can see the end is in sight and things are working again. Kyle MacLachlan, we said this last time.
Absolutely.
But he carries the show, and he's so charming, and no matter what the show throws at him, he just sort of takes it and accepts his responsibility. Like when they're take his badge and everything away from him, he's like, I am fully confident in what I did was morally right, but I'll accept the consequences because it was legally wrong or whatever.
He owns it.
Yeah, so Kyle Mack is just awesome, and when it is present, the Lynchian surrealism I love.
Absolutely.
Like when David Lynch is in the room, you can feel it, and the show is different when it's got his vibes on it.
Absolutely.
What about you? What worked for you?
Similar. I love that they leaned in on supernatural and occultist elements. That's what I like about this show. I like it when it's a drama, because who doesn't like drama? We're humans, right? I like it when it's a drama, mystery, and then we get some crazy occult stuff. That's really where it shines. So the beginning and the end of the season.
Yeah.
And just like you mentioned, Kyle Mack, I just wrote casting.
Yeah.
It was really strong. Even the new characters that I didn't love the writing for the character
Are still well.
I feel the cast was really good. Like nobody from the season 2 fresh crop cast or any of the returning season 1 casts could possibly be worse than James.
Yeah.
And so they definitely maintained that standard of pretty darn good, better than James.
And people like Billy Zane and David Duchovny, these are people that go on to have storied careers.
Yeah.
And Heather Graham, serious actors.
They have legit people in this season, and I really thought that David Duchovny's character was great. Like he goes back and uses his dead name and dressed like a man for a while because that's what the case requires, and then he goes back again when he's basically trying to trick the Frenchman. And so like the character's really clever, the acting is really good. It never seems weird. It always seems smart. And I like that.
And that is a story that happens mostly in the so-called bad episodes, though.
That's true.
So
David Duchovny was a shining beacon among the debris. It was not that not a lot of good stuff out of there, but there was a few things. So that's really what worked for me: the casting and the supernatural elements overlaid on a drama.
Okay.
So what didn't work for you?
Too many episodes.
Okay.
Like there was more episodes than there was story to tell here, and the bloat really shows. That's a lot of what we're describing. Too many cooks in the kitchen is the other thing. There's a ton of new writers and a bunch of new directors that are doing their sort of journeyman best to provide Twin Peaks content and aren't making it over the bar. Like they're just not meeting the standard that has been set. And then finally, not enough. I mean, I guess these are all ways of saying the same thing, but there's not enough of the unique flavor that Lynch and Frost brought to this. As with more episodes and more creative people being involved in it, the formula has become diluted. And it's just not the well-oiled machine it was in the first season. What about you? What didn't work for you?
So, I mean, I've kind of been complaining the whole time, but throwaway side plots that were completely uninteresting, and I got bored about them, and there was entire episodes about those throwaway side plots that I just wanted to go away, made for an overall too slow pace of the season. The 22 episodes were just not worthwhile. There's probably, like you said, 15 good ones. I particularly didn't like Nadine's cringy side plot. That was bad. There were some things I liked that I didn't like, but were not as bad. Like, I feel like Josie got done dirty. Like, I didn't like her and the maid being denigrated and made a servant and stuff. Like,
it was really... I'm glad you mentioned that because I'd forgotten it. It was really hard to take Josie being made to be a maid in her own house. Like, that really rubbed me wrong the whole time.
So it's like, I feel... So they paint her as a bad person, as a criminal and whatnot, but we of course learn that she was being manipulated and forced to do a lot of the criminal things. But at the time, basically, Catherine believes she's a bad person.
Yeah.
But basically...
But Catherine's a bad person.
Catherine is also a bad person. And it's one of these deals where it's like, sure, bad people should have consequences, but I don't think that degradation or torture or whatever is appropriate, because that says more about you than it does about them. If you are into denigrating a person and making them essentially your slave, you're a bad person, even if they're a bad person.
And that's, you know, we haven't talked about Pete, but he's another one of sort of my favorite stand-up guys in the show. Because Pete...
Pete is a mensch.
Pete never, like, even when he knows that Pete, or that Josie was somehow complicit in the attempted murder of her husband, Pete still has this soft spot for Josie and, like, misses her when she's gone.
So according to Mark Frost's book, you know what Pete's ultimate fate is?
Does it not come up in the return? Oh, he got blown up.
He got blown up, but he was shielding Audrey's body. He died to save Audrey's life.
Oh, I wanted to cry a little bit.
He's Pete. He's a good one.
Pete is the sort of guy that will sit there in his Dodge truck while you bang Billy Zane in his private jet and wait for you and then take you fishing afterwards.
Yeah, absolutely.
He's like, I got some tackle in the truck.
He's basically like Audrey's sort of adopted grandpa of sorts. And he's just like a super good guy. And so, Pete is a great dude. And the acting is awesome. The casting was great there. So that was what, that's not what I didn't like. That's what I did like. But so, all right. So what's your final thoughts and rating? Season 2 discreetly.
Season 2 discreetly. I feel like the thing you remember when you finish something, and this is why a lot of times a movie that you liked overall that ends bad, you come out feeling like that movie wasn't good, even if like 90% of it ruled. I feel like it ended strong enough. That final episode was strong enough that I came away with a mostly positive feeling, even though I was like really struggling to get through the middle of this season. But it is not as good as the first season. There's just it's not even really in the same league, but I think it squeaks out a 3-star from me.
Okay.
What about you?
So basically, like when I started watching this season, I already was like, this is not as good as the season one. So probably out of 3 stars. And then after we get past like the first 9 or 10 episodes where I think it's still a solid 3, then for, I don't know, about 7, 8 episodes or something like that, I'm like, this is a 1 star.
Ooh,
this is 1 star. This is not worth watching. I'm only choking this down because I have to talk about it.
Right.
I almost messaged you and said, bro, I can't finish this. That in and of itself is content to talk about.
Yeah.
But I decided I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to make it happen. And then the last, 4 episodes, especially the last episode, finished really strong. And I was like, okay, it kind of came back. It kind of got me again.
Yeah.
I'm back. And so I was like, am I back at a 3? Am I at a 2? Am I 2.5? Can't give it 0.5. So I'm going to call it a 3. I actually wrote that down and I haven't changed it.
Yeah.
But I teetered on a 2 for a good long time. This is a weak ass 3. Only watch it if you absolutely loved season 1.
Yeah.
And you just need to get some more. Like when I was in the comments on the YouTube video, I was talking with Lance, and I just said watch season 1 and call it finished. It's kind of like the Dune books. You can read all of them.
Yeah.
But 1 is quintessential.
Yeah, that's true.
And that's all you need.
Yeah, I think something that helped this show a lot in the intervening years was season 1. For the longest time, season 1 was the only thing that was available for home media.
Yeah.
So that was all that people had.
So people watched it and were like, whoa.
Yeah, so it's all fairly recently that season 2 became very available. so a lot of people were dedicated to this show based on season 1 alone. And that just helped. The fact that you couldn't watch season 2, but you would hear things about it, builds mystique for something.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
It would have been better if it had been lost.
and yeah, because assuredly whatever's in your head is better than James and Evelyn.
Yeah, your imagination would have served you better.
Yeah.
All right, so let's take a break, and then we'll come back with the Vault of Darkness.
Before we delve into the Vault of Darkness, we ask that all initiates of the cult follow us on your favorite social media platform at Nightshade Cult.
If you've enjoyed this content, help us grow the cult by sharing it with like-minded people and leave us a review wherever you listen.
And thanks for all the people following us on Blue Sky now.
Oh, nice.
All the Twitter refugees that have migrated over there. Yeah, we're getting a lot of likes and follows. So
And I
appreciate
appreciate the up thumbs up on the YouTube videos and the comments, especially because YouTube is our most listened to platform, and when we get interactions, it suggests it to other people in the algorithm.
Yeah.
Actually, our number one source of new listens is the algorithm.
Yeah.
So there you go.
It's funny, we do better in the algorithm when there's not a tech billionaire actively suppressing us.
Yeah, that's insane.
It's just really weird. Do you have any dark tidings before we pull out
do
of the
not.
vault? Okay, what are you pulling out of the vault?
All right, so I've been listening to a lot of audiobooks lately, and I wanted to touch on one that was an honorable mention in my year-end episode, because I read, some rumblings from the author that he maybe not about to, but he's close to publishing another, and it just got me excited again. So I mentioned a book by Patrick Rothfuss in the Kingkiller Chronicles.
Okay, right.
And I want to recommend at least the first book to anybody out there who's interested in a really good read. It's called The Name of the Wind. This is a book, the Kingkiller Chronicles has 2 full-length novels and 2 novellas, about half-length novels. And there is supposed to be another full-length coming, and it's overdue. This is not a finished series, but just like Dune, I could tell you that if you just read the first book in this series and just stopped, you'd be deeply satisfied.
So The Name of the Wind, specifically.
The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss. His writing is hauntingly good.
Oh.
It made me think, so I listened to it on Audible. It made me pause it and stop and think thinky thoughts, deep identity thoughts about myself, about the character, and the way that Rothfuss crafts the English language is literally beautiful. Okay. He is just a masterful writer. It was his first novel. He's just a super nerdy dude. He's like a gamer, D&D guy or whatever. He was a guest on Critical Role at one point, but he's just one of us.
Yeah.
And he happens to have a gift for writing beautiful words. And this character, the main character's name is Kvothe. He becomes, he's an adventurer who eventually becomes the most notorious wizard that the world has ever known. But you never learn about any of that because this book is told, it's told in with a framing narrative of a chronicler coming to chronicle the tale of this man, and he's verbally telling the tale. Okay. And so sometimes it steps out of the narrative and into the framing narrative of, older man Kvothe, who's going by a different name at the time, and he talks to the narrator and he's like, well, I'm just going to skip past some stuff and get to something else, And so it's a very unreliable narrator. Okay. But since he's talking about himself and his own life when he is narrating, it's very introspective and thought-provoking. it talks about a guy who knows nothing about magic who eventually becomes trained in magic, and it goes through that whole thing. So if you're interested in that, it's fine.
Yeah.
It's a very interesting type of magic. It's like word magic, hence the name of the wind. The name of the wind is a magic word that lets you control the wind. So anyway, this is an amazing book, and I really like the second book too, and I love the novellas, and I am excited for the next book to come out whenever it comes out. I think that this guy is, he's right up there with, if he could just get more prodigious with his writing, he could be amazing, like so popular. Right now, his books are bestsellers, but he just doesn't write fast enough. He's like 10 years. You know, he's like Martin.
Yeah. No, because he completes books.
Yeah, he does. He does complete books. Anyway, so read Patrick Rothfuss, The Name of the Wind.
Okay. And I put the audiobook in our links there.
Awesome.
So
It's a really good performance too.
Okay.
So what do you got from the vault?
So I almost did this last week, but I decided to save it to this week, and it's a Twin Peaksy show. In fact, the way the show was pitched was, well, actually, let me say what the show is. Riverdale, which ran on the CW.
Isn't that just Archie?
It is Twin Peaks with the Archie characters.
Okay.
So Riverdale is the Twin Peaks of that world. But it is essentially, like, it's a very similar premise, where it's, a young girl is killed, and that's sort of like the central mystery that the whole thing hinges around. And you have all these sort of intersecting soapy plots between the different characters. And there's just something off about the town of Riverdale in the same way that there's something off.
Are there
about
demons and stuff?
Well,
maybe.
Yeah, I mean, there kind of is, at least in universe, because Chilling Adventures of Sabrina spins out of it.
Oh,
and demons definitely
like Sabrina the Teenage Witch.
Yeah, but the Netflix,
the revamp.
Yeah, the revamped version of it.
Yeah.
So the show ran on the CW from January of 2017 through August of 2023, and it's all streaming on Netflix, as is I think 2 seasons of The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina. I'll admit I didn't finish this series, but the first several seasons of it are solid and are very Twin Peaksy.
Oh, okay.
Like, everyone described it that way, like that it's just Twin Peaks with the Archie characters. But I didn't realize how closely it really mirrored the tone and the setup of Twin Peaks until I watched Twin Peaks and was able to look back on Archie with different lenses. And there is another Twin Peaks connection in that, what's her name? Mädchen Amick, that plays Shelley, the waitress, plays Betty Cooper's mom in Riverdale.
Oh, okay. That's great.
Yeah. And so they filmed in Vancouver, like most of the CW shows do. So it has heavy Pacific Northwest vibes to it. The diner, that they're bikers, like so many of the things that are the style points, or like the iconography of Twin Peaks are used in Riverdale. Mm-hmm. It's like if Bobby wasn't a douchebag and was best friends with James,
okay,
and Audrey
and James is Jughead,
and James is Jughead.
Okay.
Yeah, James is Jughead. Archie is Bobby. Betty is Audrey, and no. Veronica is Audrey and Betty is Donna.
All right.
Essentially, yeah. That's kind of how it breaks down. And Jughead's dad is maybe Big Ed, but he's a little Big Ed, and he's a little bit of Hank too. Like, he's kind of a little bit of both.
Just a good dude, generally.
Yeah. He's a good, but he's a criminal.
Oh, okay.
He's a bad biker at the start of it. But I think he does a face turn. It's very soapy. But if you like Twin Peaks, Riverdale is very Twin Peaksy.
All right, yeah, maybe I'll watch an episode or two of that and see what I think.
And if you like Wednesday, which I know a lot of the cultists did.
Yeah, I
you
did.
Chilling Adventures of Sabrina is very much in the same
Yeah, I
vein
watched
as
the first
Wednesday.
season of that when it came out. I just didn't follow up and watch the second.
Yeah, I didn't watch the second one. Sometimes the gap is so long.
It's too long. You lose track. You forget.
Yeah.
You lose the hype.
Because I really liked the first season of Sabrina.
Yeah,
and
it was
then-
really fun.
Yeah, and then we got to the second one, and I was just like, oh, I just never found the motivation again. But
Yeah.
maybe I will now because Twin Peaks has sort of peaked it. We'll see.
Yeah, well, after season 3, after the return, which we're going to talk about next episode.
Let's do this on the mic. Are we going to talk about the return next episode or Fire Walk with Me?
I mean, doing both might be ambitious.
I was thinking we'd do the movie. We'd just stretch this to 4 episodes.
Oh, we just do the movie and then we do it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Does that work? Or do you want to keep it to 3?
Well, no, I'm fine with 4. I was just thinking that since chronologically speaking, in universe, next would be the return, right?
That's true. But the movie
Happened.
The movie happened in our universe in between, and the movie takes place before. So arguably, we could have started with the movie.
Yeah, we probably should have started with the movie.
I don't know. There's something to be said for doing it
In
the
publish order?
that the viewers saw it.
I normally read book series in publish order, even if they're published out, like if the author wrote out of order, because I like to do it in the order, like original order. I usually.
What about the Indiana Jones movies? Do you watch Temple of Doom before Raiders of the Lost Ark?
I'm out on Indiana Jones.
Sacrilege.
I don't do it. It's just like Star Wars. I'm out on Star Wars.
You're done with that too?
I'm done. I haven't watched any Star Wars anything for a long time. Since the Book of Boba Fett burned me, I haven't watched anything Star Wars.
Skeleton Crew was really good.
That's for kids, though.
It is for kids.
I don't like kids shows.
Okay, skip it. But it was. I promise it was really good. It was the best thing to come along
Since like Rogue One or something.
It was good. We're getting off track. Let's wrap this up.
We'd like to thank you for joining the Nightshade Cult.
Until we meet again, we're wishing you unpleasant dreams.